The first time I felt something was wrong, it wasn't because I saw messages or caught her lying. It was because she stopped looking guilty. Not guilty in the cheating sense, guilty in the human sense. The kind of guilt people feel when they know they're emotionally pulling away but haven't admitted it yet. She became lighter, happier in ways that had nothing to do with me. We had been together for a long time. Long enough that routines replaced surprises. Long enough that we didn't need to constantly prove love, or so I thought. We shared a place, shared bills, shared plans that lived somewhere in the future and felt permanent just because we kept mentioning them. But slowly, I became background noise in my own relationship. She started guarding her phone. Not dramatically, just small changes. Screen tilted away, notifications muted, smiling at messages she didn't explain. When I asked who she was talking to, she answered too quickly. Just work. Work became the answer to everything. Late replies? Work. Long hours? Work. Sudden trips? Work. At first, I believed her, because trusting your partner shouldn't feel like a risk. But then came the late nights. She'd come home energized instead of tired, talking fast, showering immediately, sitting on the edge of the bed scrolling instead of collapsing next to me like she used to. I told myself not to overthink it. People grow. Schedules change. That's what denial sounds like when it's trying to be reasonable. One night, I reached for her phone to check the time. A reflex, nothing intentional. She flinched. Actually flinched. She laughed it off right after, but it was too late. My stomach had already dropped. That reaction doesn't come from nothing. After that, I started noticing patterns I'd ignored before. How she dressed differently for work. How she suddenly cared about how she smelled. How she picked fights over nothing, then disappeared emotionally for days. Distance disguised as independence. I asked her directly if something was wrong between us. She sighed and said, "You're being paranoid." That word, paranoid, made me doubt myself instantly, because I didn't want to be that person. The insecure one, the controlling one. So I apologized. That apology still haunts me. Weeks passed like that. Tension without explanation. Affection without warmth. Then one evening, she forgot her phone. Left it on the kitchen counter while she showered. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't want to look, because once you look, you can't unsee. But something inside me already knew. The phone buzzed. A name popped up I didn't recognize. No emoji. No context. Just a first name. I picked it up with shaking hands. The message preview was enough. I can't stop thinking about last night. My chest tightened. My ears rang. I unlocked the phone. The messages weren't subtle. They weren't playful. They were intimate in a way that doesn't belong to someone outside your relationship. Inside jokes. Long paragraphs. Plans. Not just physical cheating. Emotional replacement. They talked about me like I was an obstacle. Something inconvenient. She described our relationship as comfortable but empty. That sentence hurt more than the cheating itself, because it meant she had already rewritten our story, and I wasn't the villain or the hero. I was just in the way. I sat there on the kitchen floor, phone in my hand, feeling stupid for how hard I had tried to keep things normal. When she came out of the shower, towel wrapped around her hair, she froze. She didn't ask why I was holding her phone. She already knew. Her face didn't show panic. It showed resignation, like this moment was inevitable. And in that silence, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't discovering the betrayal. I was arriving late to it, and I had no idea how long I'd already been alone in this relationship. She didn't scream, didn't grab the phone, didn't even try to lie. She just sat down across from me like someone waiting for a delayed train, already tired of pretending it wouldn't arrive. I asked how long. She hesitated, not because she didn't know, but because she was deciding how much truth I deserved. "A few months," she said. "Months, while we slept in the same bed, while I paid bills, while I asked if she was okay and believed her answers. I asked who he was. She said his name like it meant something important. Someone from work. someone who understood her, someone who made her feel seen. That phrase made my stomach turn, because I had spent years trying to see her. I asked why she didn't just leave. She said she didn't want to hurt me. That almost made me laugh, because apparently, lying every day was kinder than honesty once. She told me it just happened, that it wasn't planned, that it started with talking, then venting, then realizing she felt closer to him than to me. She said she didn't mean for it to go that far, but it always goes that far. I asked if she loved him. She didn't answer right away. That pause was everything. I don't know, she said finally, but what we have doesn't feel like love anymore. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not anger, grief, because she was right about one thing: what we had now didn't feel like love. But what she didn't say was that it stopped feeling like love because she stopped feeding it. She stopped choosing us. She asked if we could talk about fixing things. That shocked me, because she was the one who stepped outside the relationship, and yet she wanted us to repair what she broke. I asked her to explain how she imagined that working. She said she'd stop talking to him, that she'd try harder, that we could go to therapy, try harder. After months of secrets, I asked if she'd already ended things with him. She said no, not yet, because she didn't know what she wanted. That was the moment something shifted in me. I realized I wasn't fighting for a relationship. I was competing with someone who had already been living rent-free in my place. I asked her to leave for the night. She packed a small bag. No drama, no resistance. At the door, she looked back and said, "I never meant to hurt you." I didn't respond, because intentions don't matter when the damage is real. That night, I didn't sleep. I replayed everything. Every moment I felt ignored. Every time I apologized for asking basic questions. Every instinct I silenced because I didn't want to seem insecure. I realized how slowly cheating happens sometimes. Not with hotel rooms or lipstick stains, but with conversations that should have stayed surface level. With emotional intimacy redirected somewhere else. With one partner slowly becoming optional. The next day, she texted me, said she missed me, said she was confused, said she felt guilty. Guilt is cheap when it doesn't change behavior. I asked one question: "Did you tell him about me?" She replied, "Yes." I asked what she told him: that I was kind, that I was safe, that I was good to her. None of those words mean chosen. That's when I understood something painful. I wasn't betrayed in a moment. I was replaced over time. And part of me knew that even if she came back, I would never stop wondering when I'd lose her again. The trust wasn't cracked. It was gone. And I was standing in the ruins, trying to decide whether walking away would hurt more than staying ever could. When she came back the next day, she didn't look like someone who had made a decision. She looked like someone who wanted comfort without consequence. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, eyes tired, voice soft, hands wrapped around a mug she didn't drink from. She talked about confusion, about how overwhelmed she felt, about how she never planned for things to get this messy. I listened quietly, not because I agreed, but because I needed to hear how far she'd go to avoid responsibility. She said she cared about me deeply, that I was important, that what we had mattered. But every sentence was about her feelings. Not once did she ask how I was sleeping. Not once did she ask what this did to me. Not once did she acknowledge the humiliation of being emotionally replaced while still sharing a life. I asked her if she had spoken to him since leaving. She hesitated, then nodded. She said they needed closure. That word made my chest tighten, because closure apparently was something she was willing to give him, but not me. I asked if she was willing to completely cut contact. No messages, no checking in, no late-night conversations disguised as friendship. She said she didn't know if she could promise that. And in that moment, everything became clear. She didn't want to lose me. She just didn't want to give him up. I realized then that I wasn't being chosen. I was being kept, as a safety net, as familiarity, as the stable option in case the exciting one didn't work out. That realization hurt more than the cheating itself. because it stripped away the last illusion I was holding on to, that love was still at the center of this. I told her I needed space. Real space. She cried. Said I was giving up too easily. Said relationships take work. I almost believed her. Then I remembered all the work I'd done alone while she invested her emotional energy elsewhere. I asked her one final question. If I hadn't found the messages, how long would this have continued? She didn't answer. That silence was my answer. I asked her to move out. Not dramatically, not angrily, just firmly. She looked shocked, like she genuinely believed I'd keep trying no matter what. She asked if this was really it. I told her yes, because staying would mean teaching myself to live with doubt, with suspicion, with the constant fear that I'd never fully have her again. She left that evening. The apartment felt empty in a different way than before. Not lonely, clean. The days after were brutal. I won't pretend otherwise. I missed her voice, her routines, even the version of her that no longer existed. I questioned myself constantly. Was I too harsh? Could therapy have helped? Was walking away a mistake? But every time doubt crept in, I reminded myself of one truth. Love shouldn't make you feel replaceable. Weeks passed. I stopped waiting for her messages. Stopped imagining apologies that never came. Stopped hoping she'd suddenly choose me completely. And slowly, something unexpected happened. I felt stronger. Not healed, stronger. I realized that I didn't lose a relationship. I escaped one that had already let me go. I learned that cheating isn't always about desire. Sometimes it's about cowardice, about wanting something new without letting go of something safe. And I learned something else too, something that changed how I see myself. I didn't fail because I trusted. I didn't lose because I loved deeply. I walked away because I finally loved myself enough to stop competing for someone who had already made their choice. If you've ever been in a relationship where you felt slowly replaced, where your instincts were dismissed and your loyalty was taken for granted, subscribe and stay. These stories aren't just drama. They're reminders that choosing yourself is sometimes the hardest and bravest ending of all. I found out she was cheating 3 hours before I was supposed to say, I do. Not weeks before, not the night before, the morning of the wedding. My suit was hanging on the closet door. Her dress was already at the venue. Guests were flying in. Phones were buzzing with congratulations. And I was standing in a quiet hotel room, staring at a screen that had just ended everything I thought my life was about to become. It didn't start with suspicion. It started with logistics. Her phone kept vibrating on the nightstand while she was in the shower. I wasn't snooping. I was trying to silence it so she could relax. Big day. Nerves. Normal stuff. A message preview lit up the screen. I can't stop thinking about last night. Today feels wrong. My stomach dropped so hard I had to sit down. I told myself it had to be a misunderstanding. A stressed friend. A joke taken out of context. Anything except what it looked like. But my hands were already shaking as I unlocked the phone. The messages were recent. Too recent. Hours ago. They weren't vague. They weren't flirty. They were intimate in a way that left no room for interpretation. Plans. Confessions. Regret not about cheating but about timing. He wrote that seeing her walk down the aisle would kill him. She replied that she wished things were simpler. Simpler, as if marrying me was a complication. I scrolled further back. Weeks, months. This wasn't a mistake. This was a second relationship running parallel to ours. Hidden behind cake tastings and seating charts and vows we wrote together at the kitchen table. I felt numb. Not dramatic numb. Mechanical numb. Like my body shut something off to keep me from collapsing. The shower turned off. I locked the phone and placed it exactly where it had been. She came out wrapped in a towel, smiling nervously, talking about how weird it felt that the day was finally here. I looked at her and felt like I was seeing a stranger wearing my fiancé's face. She asked if I was okay. I said yes. I don't know why I lied. Maybe I needed to hear her lie too. While she got ready, I sat on the edge of the bed replaying everything. Every late night she blamed on work. Every friend she said I didn't need to worry about. Every time I ignored that quiet feeling in my gut because trusting her felt easier than questioning the woman I was about to marry. I remembered how people kept telling me how lucky I was. She's perfect. You're punching above your weight. She chose you. That last one echoed in my head. She chose you. Except now I knew she had chosen someone else too. She asked me to zip up her dress. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the zipper. I looked at her reflection in the mirror. Hair done, makeup perfect, eyes bright with excitement, and wondered how long she'd been carrying this secret into moments like this. I asked her, calmly, if there was anything she needed to tell me before we left. She paused, just for a second, then smiled and said, "No, I'm just nervous." That pause told me everything. She kissed my cheek and went to meet the bridesmaids. I stayed behind, alone, in a room full of evidence that my life was about to split into two timelines, the one everyone expected and the one I was about to be forced into. I checked the messages one last time. He had sent another text. "If you go through with it, I'll disappear. But I needed you to know I love you." She hadn't replied yet. That hurt more than if she had, because it meant she was still deciding. And suddenly, the question wasn't whether she was cheating. It was whether I was about to marry someone who would always keep a second door open. I stood up, put on my jacket, and stared at myself in the mirror. I looked like a groom, but I felt like someone attending his own funeral. And as guests started arriving downstairs, smiling and excited, I realized I had only one decision left to make, and no amount of love, planning, or public pressure could make it easier. Because once you see the truth on the morning of your wedding, you can't unsee it. And whatever I chose next would change every life in that room forever. I sat there longer than I should have, suit jacket still on, tie loosened, phone face down on the table like it might explode if I touched it again. Downstairs, I could hear laughter, music testing, glasses clinking, a wedding assembling itself piece by piece, completely unaware that the foundation had already cracked. My phone buzzed, a message from my best friend asking where I was. 5 minutes, I replied, a lie that bought me time. I kept replaying the pause she'd made earlier, that half-second hesitation before saying she had nothing to tell me. That pause was heavier than any confession. It meant she had weighed the truth and decided silence was easier. I stood up and paced the room. What was I supposed to do? Cancel the wedding and humiliate her in front of everyone? Confront her privately and pretend the day could still continue? Say nothing and walk into a marriage already poisoned by betrayal? Every option felt like a different kind of loss. I thought about the vows we'd written, how seriously she'd taken them, how she'd cried while reading mine, how she'd said honesty was the most important thing to her. The irony burned. I checked the messages again, hoping stupidly that I'd misunderstood something, that context would suddenly soften the truth. Didn't. He had sent another text. "I'm waiting, whatever you decide." Waiting, while she stood downstairs in a white dress, smiling for photos, while I stood alone, deciding whether to destroy my own wedding. I went to find her. She was in the bridal suite, surrounded by bridesmaids, laughter filling the room. She looked radiant, nervous but happy. When she saw me, her face softened. "Is everything okay?" she asked. Everyone else went quiet. I nodded and asked if we could talk alone. The room cleared slowly, confused but polite. When the door closed, the silence felt thick. I didn't yell, didn't accuse. I handed her the phone. She stared at it for a long time. Then her shoulders dropped. She didn't ask how I found out. She didn't deny it. She sat down on the edge of the couch and covered her face. "I didn't plan for this," she said quietly. That sentence almost broke me, because nothing about this had been accidental. I asked how long. She said a while. I asked if it was still happening. She nodded. I asked if she loved him. She cried harder but didn't answer. That was answer enough. I asked why she was marrying me. She said because I was safe, because I was good, because she didn't want to lose me. None of those reasons included love. I asked if she was going to tell me. She shook her head. She said she hoped it would fade, that once we were married, things would settle, that she'd made a mistake and just needed time. Time, like marriage was a reset button. I told her the wedding was in less than an hour. She said we could still go through with it, that no one needed to know, that we could deal with this later. Later, as if betrayal had an expiration date. I looked at her and realized something devastating. She wasn't panicking because she'd hurt me. She was panicking because she might lose everything at once. I asked her if she'd cut contact with him right now. She hesitated, just for a second. That hesitation destroyed any doubt I had left. I told her I needed space to think. She begged me not to do anything drastic. Said emotions were high. Said today wasn't the day to make life-altering decisions. I almost laughed, because today was exactly the day life-altering decisions were unavoidable. I left the room and walked down a back hallway, away from guests, away from expectations. My parents were already seated, smiling, proud. Her parents were crying happy tears. Everyone had shown up for a story they believed in, and I was standing behind the curtain, holding a truth that would shatter it. My best friend found me, took one look at my face and knew. "What happened?" he asked quietly. I told him everything. He didn't try to calm me down, didn't tell me to think about the guests, didn't tell me to give her another chance. He just said, "Whatever you decide, I'm with you." That was the first moment that day I didn't feel completely alone. The coordinator came over and said it was time. Music started playing. Guests stood. I could see the aisle from where I was. The place where I was supposed to walk forward and promise my future to someone who couldn't promise me loyalty even before the ceremony. My heart was pounding so loud I thought others might hear it. This was the moment. Not later. Not after the honeymoon. Not after therapy. Now. And as the doors prepared to open, I realized that what I did next wouldn't just define my marriage. It would define who I was willing to become in order to keep it. The music was still playing when I stepped away from the doors. Guests thought it was a delay, technical issue, a nervous groom needing a minute. No one knew the truth yet. I walked into a quiet side room with my best friend and closed the door. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit down. My body felt like it was running on adrenaline alone, like if I stopped moving, I'd collapse. I kept thinking about her hesitation. That single pause when I asked her to cut contact with him. That pause had chosen for me. I realized something brutally clear in that moment. If I married her today, I would be teaching myself to accept betrayal as the price of stability. And I couldn't live like that. I stood up, straightened my jacket, and took a deep breath. Then I did the one thing I never imagined doing on my wedding day. I walked toward the front, not down the aisle, but toward the coordinator. I told her quietly that the wedding wasn't happening. Her face drained of color. She asked if it was a joke. I shook my head. She asked if I was sure. I said yes. Within minutes, confusion spread like a ripple. People whispered. Parents stood up. The music stopped. Her mother rushed toward me, panic written all over her face. "What's going on?" she asked. I looked past her and saw my fiancé standing frozen near the bridal suite, dress still perfect, makeup untouched, eyes already filling with tears. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I said one sentence. "There's someone else." That was all it took. Her mother's face collapsed. My parents looked stunned. Guests murmured in disbelief. She started crying, saying it wasn't what it looked like, saying it was complicated, saying she loved me. I didn't argue, because this wasn't a courtroom. This was the end. I walked out of the venue while people were still processing what they'd just heard. I didn't wait for explanations or apologies. I didn't stay to manage anyone else's emotions. For the first time that day, I chose myself without compromise. Outside, the air felt unreal, like stepping into a different life. I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel for a long time. I expected to feel regret. Instead, I felt grief, clean, honest grief, mixed with something else. Relief. The fallout was brutal. Friends took sides. Some people said I overreacted, that I should have handled it privately, that canceling the wedding was extreme. But no one who said that had been the one about to promise forever to someone who was already divided. She tried to contact me for weeks after. Long messages, apologies, promises, tears. She said she was willing to cut him off now, that she'd made a mistake, that fear had made her stupid. I believed she was sorry. I just didn't believe she would have been honest if I hadn't caught her. That mattered. Returning gifts was humiliating. Canceling plans was painful. Explaining the story over and over felt like reopening the wound every time. But slowly, the noise faded. What stayed was clarity. I realized how close I had come to a life built on doubt. A marriage where trust would always be conditional. Where every late night and unexplained smile would feel like a threat. I didn't dodge heartbreak. I chose the version I could survive. Months later, I ran into her by chance. She looked different, quieter, smaller somehow. She asked if I hated her. I said no. Hate would have meant she still had power over me. I told her I hoped she figured out what she really wanted before hurting someone else. Then I walked away. I don't know what would have happened if I'd gone through with that wedding. But I know this. Walking away hurt. Staying would have destroyed me. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do on the most important day of your life is admit that the future you planned is no longer the future you deserve. If this story shook you, if you've ever ignored your instincts because it felt easier to move forward than to stop everything, subscribe and stay. These stories exist to remind you that choosing yourself, even at the worst possible moment, can still be the right ending.